Okay, y'all. Y'all know what time it is. I had just dropped the video, which I made about 2 days ago, regarding Dakota Kai and some people who were on the chopping block to get released. And then, boom, they actually released her. And some other people that I had in that video. I wasn't going to post it, but I said, well, I made the effort into making the video. And then CapCut started messing up, didn't want to find my voice note and add it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to just post it even after the news dropped. But this is going to be sort of a follow-up. Plus, we're going to talk about the releases and it was this the right decision? So first, we go into Braun Strowman. Me personally, I'm not releasing Braun Strowman, but some people I heard was saying Braun Strowman, he had a neck injury and he had some kind of fused neck bone or something like that, and he was injury prone. Well, Braun Strowman just came back and he put over Jacob Fatu. He brought some legitimacy to that U.S. title division on SmackDown. He did the job. And does he deserve to be released? No, but I don't know what his contract was. I don't know how much he was getting paid. Maybe they had worked on a deal behind the scenes saying, look, we're going to pay you this large amount of money to put these guys over, and that's it. And I don't know that situation. If it was a deal like that, then I'll say, that's a good deal. But also, by them releasing him while he was pretty much hot, I think that might help too, because now you're an in-demand wrestler, and all of these indie promotions are going to see you as an attraction. So he might could hit the indie circuit and, make a lot of money like that, than being, maybe a full-timer on TNA or AEW. AEW might want to go to AEW, but Braun Strowman ain't about to do all of that crazy hardcore stuff and get hurt going to AEW. Next is Shayna Baszler. Shayna Baszler, I thought about this one, and I was about to say, I wouldn't have released her. I would have made her into more of a monster type wrestler where, she's running through people, being a good heel. Because, Shayna Baszler is not one of those wrestlers that put on the lingerie and go out there. She would have been a definite heel to those kind of wrestlers. But some information I didn't know was that Shayna Baszler was throwing shots at Jade Cargill, saying, oh, she could beat her up in real life, and it was a shoot. It wasn't just some gimmick stuff. So boom, Shayna Baszler pretty much talked herself out of WWE. So hey, WWE is fake pro wrestling. So coming at Jade like that behind the scenes and having legitimate heat with Jade for no reason, bye-bye. I think a lot of other people would have liked her out of the locker room too. Dakota Kai, injury prone, yes, but Edge was also injury prone and it gave him the world. So, like I said from my last video, creative did nothing with Dakota Kai, and I think that's why she got released. She was injured, And when she wasn't injured, y'all didn't do nothing with her. And y'all could have kept the Damage Control name alive, but Asuka's out. I mean, everybody in Damage Control was pretty much injured. Asuka's out, Kari's out, Io's out. Hell, I'm surprised Kari Zane didn't get released, but you know, Kari, Asuka, and Io could hold their own. Dakota Kai could hold her own too, but Triple H and Creative cannot book her. They did her a disservice. Dakota Kai is probably going to TNA. Dakota Kai can go to AEW. But like I said, AEW is going to kill somebody. It's going to happen. They're too dangerous. They could use a Dakota Kai, but to play it safe, I think Dakota Kai is going to TNA or NWA, you know, some other faction. She's probably not going to go on that super indie, jumping from promotion to promotion type gimmick. I like to see her in TNA or, you know, some other promotion that's not doing the super hardcore, you know, just crazy gimmicks. Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. It's another thing. I mean, it's clear. It's just creative. Creative booked them into oblivion. They are the only women's tag team that they have, besides these other made-up tag teams that just are needed for storyline. You know, you could have built up that tag team division maybe with 2 other tag teams, but if WWE isn't going to use them and they just held them hostage, man, go. I'll be happy to see them go to TNA. I would be happy to see them go to AEW. And I think if they did go to AEW, they will be used correctly. Some people might not agree with that, but to be honest, WWE didn't use them correctly. So how could AEW do any worse, or TNA? Now, the other releases, you know, you got Cora Jade. They kind of built her up like she was going to be this big star, but, you know, a pretty face, WWE has a lot of them. WWE also has a lot of the lingerie wearing wrestlers that can wrestle. So she really would have had to stick out. They're saying she's injury prone too, but Cora Jade is really young. She would have recovered from those injuries. And, you know, Cora Jade, you know, if she did go to AEW or back to AEW, I don't think she's going to do that because they'll just not put her over. Cora Jade, if you go to TNA, you might get over there. But they might also try to, you know, you're so young that I don't think they will make you just job out to put over TNA talent. I think they'll use you to build the brand up more. If not, I would go to maybe a smaller promotion and you can try to get back in WWE, get yourself hot. The problem with WWE is that they're doing all of these partnerships, which makes it hard to get back on that main roster. Cody had to damn near start another promotion to try to get back, you know, with the WWE. So next, you know, I mean, these people, you know, I'm just going to talk about the big ones for right now. Jakara Jackson, is crazy. Releasing Jakara Jackson is crazy because you broke up the metaphor. But in hindsight, Jakara Jackson, she's going to TNA. She might go to AEW, maybe. But, I don't see Jakara Jackson wanting to do all that hardcore stuff. Doing all of those, I'm not going to say botchy moves, but, they take more risks in AEW. And Jakara Jackson, I would go to TNA too, but some of these people like Cora Jade, Jakara Jackson, Shotzi as well. If they wanted to go out of the country and wrestle, they could. Wrestlers like that would do great in CMLL, even AAA. But it's going to be hard for them to probably go into that AAA and that TNA arena unless they really want them, because you're trying to, WWE is the big dog. That's where you make a lot of money, but creative is killing y'all. Creative in WWE is killing y'all. And a lot of people, they're saying don't blame Triple H for this, for these releases. He doesn't control it. But he's the booker and, he's over creative. You need to put your talent that you have over, and you're acquiring. I wouldn't even say acquiring, but you're partnering with all of these other talents, and you only have, even your show is 3 hours, but ain't nothing going on. You got the same 50 wrestlers wrestling on each show. Raw and SmackDown have the same 25 wrestlers over and over again, and y'all doing nothing with them. And I mean, everyone else on the list, no one really cares for. Like Eddie Thorpe, okay. It's not much to say about these other people that, they didn't make a grand difference whether they were really there or not. These releases are a business decision. 50%, is probably the money and stuff, even though you're selling 38 grand tickets at, WrestleMania, and your PLEs are sky high too. But they're making way for the new talent that's there. They're also hiring new creative as well. I'm not going to get too much into the Wyatt 6 isn't going, but they have plans for them, I'm pretty sure. But this year and the next year going forward, creative has to do something, or Triple H just needs to be fired. Because too many great people on this list that's gone. But I understand, it's like I say, it's out with the old, in with the new. You got to have fire stories going on to get these people over. There's no way you can bring a Julia, a Roxanne Perez, and, have them hot for 1 year and then throw them away and just have them on the sideline doing nothing. I hope everyone that's released, I hope they could go to another big promotion. Maybe, Dakota Kai might want to do the Mercedes Moné run. Hell, Mercedes Moné went, she was wrestling in Stardom and stuff. Go ahead, go to Japan for a year. Go to Mexico for a year. Go to, you're still hot. You still have some fire underneath you. I would link up with them and say, if I was Dakota Kai, I would see if Braun Strowman, Shayna Baszler, hey, y'all want to get together and, you know, come as a package deal, you know, to wrestle overseas, you know. You know, Kaden Carter was trying to stay relevant, having Damian Priest on all of her TikToks. You know, but that wasn't enough to stay relevant. So, you know, we gon' see. We gonna see. You know, I hope the best for him. You know, I don't want everyone to just run to AEW, because AEW has talent too that they need to get over. And, you know, they're really with the crazy hardcore bumps and all of that. I'm not a big fan of it. I was a fan of it as a kid, but the older I got and I realized these people are putting their bodies on the line, the super hardcore stuff should be saved for when you have a built up feud that can't go anymore, where it's so built up and the story calls for it. You know, kind of like the Jade and Naomi. You tried to run me over with the car, which you did. You had me out for a couple of months. Okay, give them a street fight. Give them a ladder match. Give them a steel cage match. I would have put them in a steel cage match. But no, they had a regular match and they're still feuding. Let it end in a steel cage or something. That's when you pull out the hardcore stuff. But creative is so stupid they can't do that. You know, if y'all gonna release all these wrestlers, release the entire creative team. Hire some new people, and a requirement would have had to been you've watched wrestling for at least 10 years, or you have some sort of track record of published books, or you know none of these people probably ever took a creative writing class, especially what they're doing. You know, I'm not going to tell them what to do. You know, your Jim Cornettes, your Eric Bischoffs, you know, all of them don't want nothing to do with the business. But, I mean, God, come on. I mean, call Kurt Angle. Call The Undertaker. Call, you know, some of those ECW guys. Call, you know, I'm pretty sure even if New Jack was alive, y'all could have hit him up for a little storyline. There are so many people that was wrestling from the 90s to the 2000s. Some of the, you know, even older wrestlers that were wrestling in the 80s that could give you some kind of little input on what to do. But I don't know, Vince McMahon era versus this Triple H era, I don't know what to say. Get 2025 to 2026 better come hard, or we're gonna have to petition Triple H to not be head of creative anymore. But that's it for this video. Any updates that come out, I might make a part 2 to this, but let's see what we have in store. Peace.